Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you to the first session of Age of the Conversation in the Woo Woo Room #2. I am a room parent. I'm Deb. Our other room parent is Nicole. And our speaker today, or presenter, I should say, is Beck. He's the #1 astrologer in the Crescent City. And I'm going to pass it off to you so you can tell everybody a little bit more about yourself, and then we could just dive right in.
Yes, give us the credentials, Dan.
Yes.
Well, my credentials really are all about you because that's in many ways my purpose in life, to serve the clients who come before me as the Oracle in New Orleans. So I'm coming to y'all from here in the Crescent City, New Orleans. So I'm going to share the screen right now to give you a visual, and you can read along as I speak. And by the way, just simply, this is the age of conversation. So as questions come up, please ask them. And you can ask technical questions about what I'm going to be speaking about. I'm going to be talking about astrology and love, but I would really recommend you try to personalize your questions, because that's what this presentation is going to be about. It's going to be about love and communication and the nature of love, but how we love each other. Really kind of great stuff, and I think gets lost in our world today, of course. Let me just go ahead and share the screen. Okay, and so age of conversation. So my gosh, how many conversations occur in the world, especially driven by media and technology? I was thinking about just even 20 years ago, how much less we talk. And but just quickly, my credentials: Oracle in New Orleans, #1 astrologer. If you look me up, I'm really, very proud to be the guy here as an ambassador for astrology in the Crescent City. If anybody's ever been to New Orleans, there are a lot of psychics, a lot of tarot readers, all great stuff. Pretty much every spiritual tradition. But I'm pretty much the one who does astrology, and we're going to talk about what astrology is as we get into the session. But to learn more about what I do, go to innermakeup.net. You can also go to Facebook. My Facebook page is Go Inner Makeup. Lots of great stuff that comes out through the website, and you can also go to the website and sign up for my email list. On the Facebook page, I do daily moon messages, which every day is actually ruled by a planet. So simply, when you think about Sunday, it's the Sunday, or Moon Day is the Moon Day. So each day has a certain energy, and you really want to tap into that energy to really make a good turn for each day for yourself. And I'm with you every day on those moon messages. We were talking earlier, I have a podcast called the Star Love Podcast. You can get that on iTunes, and that comes out through, again, the email list, Facebook, and it's right on the website. I also do some writing here in the Crescent City, and for different places, but principally for Ambush magazine, which is the largest LGBTQ magazine here in the Gulf South. So it goes all the way from Texas to the Panhandle. Some other stuff too, as far as writing is concerned, and some lecturing that I do. But that's me. But it's really, astrology is about the stars. It's about me as the Oracle, the astrologer, and it's about you. It's about pressing beautiful divinatory moments. So this is a moment of spirit and astrology and love. So really get into that spirit, I would suggest to you today and throughout the entirety of this summit. Because that, when you open up to love and emotion and speaking from the heart, either about the heart or just what you want to communicate, great things actually do happen. It's hard because we live in a very, oftentimes what is emphasized is materialistic, dismal, realistic world. Not that we don't need to face hard reality, but trying to get into love and enchantment can be a great help to all of us and your life in general. Okay. So this is entitled The One Where We Talk With and About Love. And I was inspired to do this talk because one of my favorite writers is Raymond Carver. That's the guy on the right. And that is the lady on the left. I think she's still alive. That's Tess Gallagher. So they got married towards the end of his life, but he used to write all these stories. It was kind of about characters who were very sincere, but, you know, as many forms of literature or stories or whatnot, art is, it's about things falling apart. It's about like things happening, either a disaster or something that provokes the characters. And then you really, you know, the idea is the character transforms or learns a lesson. So I was reading a story, it's called What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. And it's about four friends. They all come from different places and they end up in Albuquerque. They come down from Santa Fe. So, you know, you think about Santa Fe, if you know the city being very kind of idyllic, and there's Santa Fe Opera Festival and all sorts of art, and it's, you know, very beautiful. And Albuquerque, you know, it's a cool city, but definitely a little bit more like a city. It's, you know, a little bit more gritty. So they're in a kitchen together, the lights coming in, and they're sort of held in this moment together where they start talking about all of their past relationships and how they actually love each other in that moment. So that's the one where we talk with and about love. So they come to love each other in this moment, but they're also in the story talking about what the nature of love is. So when these things happen, it's really incredible because we can gain insight into ourselves, we can gain insight into how we really feel about each other, and we can gain insight into how we feel about love in our own relationships. So this really is great stuff about how to, through in the age of communication, how to really take a chance on love. Okay. So dialing it back a little bit, what is astrology? Well, first a little bit, astronomy versus astrology. Astronomy is the measurement of the heavens as we actually know them. So we know, take for example, astrology it's not really about, okay, and in part it is, but it's about, okay, we're rotating every day, 24-hour cycle, we're rotating around the sun, you know, Mars rotates around the sun. But astrology is much more about the interpretation of those cycles as viewed from here on Earth. And there are a lot of different ways to think about astrology. There are different ways, but essentially it's the rise and fall of the planetary bodies every day, the two luminaries, the sun and the moon, Mars, all these planetary bodies that we see in the heavens. And honestly, how that relates to our life, our relationship to the cosmos. So that's different than, you know, measuring planets and their sizes and classifying them and all that. Not that all that's not important. And so one of the principal things in astrology is that each of you has a birth chart. You have a moment of birth, and the way the heavens were aligned is, in some sense, a reflection of who you are, your psyche, your inner makeup, as I call it. So you can refer back to that document almost like a book when you're trying to gain some insight into yourself and the events that are occurring in your life. And again, really make a great change. So it's not so much that it's this, in my opinion, an objective document that can be tested, but that it's really about, wow, what's going on in my life? Who am I? You know, what are the situations that are happening in my life right now? How can I sort of use them to make a turn for the better? So that's why I say astrology is best categorized as the reigning queen of divination. So again, it's not so much that it's this objective science, but it's that, you know what, I really need to consult the chart and really see what's going on. So if it follows that astrology is divination, even this moment is a moment of astrology. It's a very famous book. Or that this is a divinatory moment. So again, I'm really emphasizing that you might take a moment, especially as, you know, we're getting into this summit. What's going on in your life right now? Even if you know just your basic sun sign, like your Gemini or your Taurus, you know, what is that? You know, what is my own nature? And what's my own character? And there's an old saying that character is destiny. So maybe how has my nature led me to this moment? How can I best understand myself and then maybe make a turn? And then as the talk is about love, how can I do that from love and with those around me, really open my heart up to that? Okay, does anybody have hello, good morning. Everybody just coming in. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions so far? Any questions in the feed? Like, even if it's just, like I'm a Aries, how do I approach love, or that kind of thing, or how can I
So,
best, huh?
Dan, we have a few
Yes.
people
Okay.
that are like on the cusp. They're
Yeah.
Okay.
right
All
at
right.
that date change, and I am too.
Yes.
I'm like
Okay.
a day away from a cusp. So we have a Taurus and a Gemini. We have a Sag and a Capricorn, and I'm on Aquarius and Pisces.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I
Okay.
can't speak for everybody, but I'm
Yes.
just we're all like a day
Yes.
away from the next thing.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I don't know if that's
So
going to come into picture. And as I
yeah,
mentioned
yeah.
earlier, I'm coming from the
Okay.
Bay Area, and the skies are covered in smoke. So I
Right.
don't know if that affects everything too as well.
Okay.
But
No, this
I'm
is
throwing it
really
out there.
no, this is really good. These are all good questions. So, and different astrologers have different takes, but I believe that we are intertwined if we're open to it in a very magical, enchanting cosmos. Again, hard to sometimes see that with the way that we interface with kind of hard reality, but if there's a chance that that omen kind of speaks to you in a certain way, like the smoke, then that's valid to interpret. So it's omens and things and kind of symbols can announce themselves. So I don't think that that should be divorced from astrology. There's a famous book, and there was a whole podcast I did about this, a book called Moment of Astrology. And the subtitle is Origins and Divination. So the origins of astrology are divinatory. It started to move away from that. I don't want to get too much into the history, but it tried to define itself as a natural science. And then so again, like you think science, like electricity, how we can replicate things every time, I need the light to turn on, I need the plane to fly. So we're really used to that. But post Age of Enlightenment, when we really started to get modern science and even religion, the divinatory enchanted framework kind of fell by the wayside. But if you're kind of like, hey, this morning there's smoke outside, well, what might that signify to you? Now, it might not signify anything, but if there's something that it loosens your mind, it bends your mind so you can make a change there and make a move, then that's how I would interpret that. Now, it can be a red herring. You can lead, the daimon, or just daimon just means spirit. The spirit can lead you, and we can even go down a rabbit hole, and you might not want to go there. But if there's something that the spirit can speak to you, whether symbolically or whether you believe in spirits or not, if there's something that speaks to you, that can be useful. Now, okay, so that's that. So on the cusp, so technically, the cusp for people are only, it's a very small sliver that you're actually on the cusp. But that being said, again, astrology is a divinatory art. It's an interpretive analysis. If somehow the cusp you're kind of like, I'm kind of Sag and Capricorn, especially just on a basic sun sign level, that can be meaningful. Now, of course, there's your whole chart. The sun sign is one basic thing, but sometimes just a basic thing is all you need. So if that resonates with you, interpret it and see what might be there. And if there's truth to that, then the symbolism appears in a moment for you. And then that's something that can be useful again as some kind of abstraction that helps you to make a move. Okay? Okay, it's good to go on. Any other questions?
Not yet.
Okay, all right. And again, the whole point of this really is that it can apply to you. Okay, I don't think, astrology can be this beautiful abstract art, but the idea is, the old word influenza, it doesn't mean like you get ill, but it is like a fall. The stars fall to us, and that we're kind of fallen in a way that we're enchanted by it in a moment. So whatever's coming up for you right now, I would really think about that as this moment that we're being held, like the characters in what we talk about when we talk about love, okay? Being held in a moment, and think about that a little bit and feel it. Love is about feel, okay? All right, modern. So what's modern love? Well, we're really into ourselves, right? We're really into myself, who I am, what my career is, my social security number, I like this. So yeah, that's actually the sign that would be associated with that is Leo. So we're talking about modern love, we're talking about self-expression, I love, there can be a little drama around that, there can be unrequited love, you know, recreational sex, even creativity, but it's definitely about the ego. It's definitely about oneself and one's ego. So, you know, how many times, ironically, you're in a relationship or we're in a relationship and it's about me? So this is more the modern conception of love, and it can be quite intense that way. So, and you know, that's just what it is. I'm not making a judgment on it, but it is much more about the self and the loving self or the creative self. Okay.
When we're
So
talking about modern love, Dan, do
yes.
you feel that different individuals like experience love differently? Like we've talked about like love languages before. Um, do you feel that different individuals are like, yeah, they like experience love in different ways?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're all individuals. I mean, we all have a different astrology chart. We all have different genetic makeup. We all grow up in different cultures. So, of course, like there are going to be different conceptions of love. But even I would say, as the poet Rilke said, love the question. I mean, even the way you phrase the question, different individuals experiencing love. So, we're still conceiving of it as an individualistic process. So, even if there's variation, it still is about the individual, especially as I'm defining it in modern times. Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, going next. Okay, so let's go back, you know, thousands of years. So modern love is all about Leo. Okay, so does anybody know any Leos?
Yes.
Okay, so Leo's no, and it's not bad. Leo's like the big-hearted sign of the zodiac. It's the lion or the lioness. It's about the heart. It's about expression. It can be about performance. So it is the sort of that, you know, that big-hearted golden presence in a room. It's a very different practice of astrology when we go back thousands of years. And they're not mutually exclusive, but we're talking about like ancient romance and love. It's really not about you, okay? Love is not about the individual self. And interestingly, the planet Venus, she finds her joy in the part of the astrology chart that is love. Okay, makes sense. But Venus is all about relational stuff. Venus is how we relate to beauty, how we relate to harmony, how we relate to things that we think are beautiful, like love objects. And Venus is also much more gestational. It's much more about children, creativity, when you think of your creative babies. And it's there's more of a slowness to it. It's less of a, Leo, I'm here, it's my love, it's, you know, I proclaim my love to something, or, you know, this kind of thing. But, you know, ancient is much more about feel, good fortune, children, creativity. It's much more gestational. It's less about the self, the identity, and the ego. And it's much more time. It's kind of like a slow burn. You know, it's much more feminine in a way. It's less masculine. So again, going back to in modern times, we tend to think about love as this compartment of ourselves or our identity, but in antiquity, it had much more to do with just your creative acts, children. And actually, interestingly, in Chinese culture, there's a similar feeling about this. Creativity and children are one and the same thing. So it's much more about creative offspring, creativity, love, feel, and sort of almost mystery about it. So so I want you to hold these two ideas of love, and maybe in your own life, when you're thinking about relationships or romance, wow, okay, like I'm kind of thinking about myself in the context of that. But in antiquity, there's also this taking yourself outside of yourself, which is about, you know, again, just a creative act as opposed to yourself, or children, or creative babies, or the good fortune around children. You know, in Judaism, it was raised Jewish, having children is a mitzvah. So it's less about oneself and about the good fortune around love and children and creativity and romance. Okay.
Are these, when we talk about like Venus, you're talking about the planet Venus, but
Yes.
the name for the planet Venus comes from the Roman god that's related to the Greek god Aphrodite. So you know, do you feel like the personification of love as Aphrodite is like a good parallel for the type of love that you're talking about?
Very good question. So, okay, so definitely the Roman pantheon is taken from the Greek gods. So it's a little bit different. So Venus as a symbol nowadays. So, okay, so when you had the Greek gods, you weren't talking necessarily about planetary form. So
Right.
when you're talking about the gods, you're talking about, okay, Zeus being on Mount Olympus, and it was much more still tied to the earth, like mountain, earth, sea. So like, you know, Zeus or Poseidon or Hades in the underworld. So it's still much more earthbound. As you started to get into astronomy, then Venus became a symbol of love. But yes, it does connect back to Aphrodite. The other thing that's quite interesting, Aphrodite, yes, as being this aphrodisiac about love. And then I think the son of Aphrodite was Cupid. So you think of love striking, you know, and like a love as a fall and like sort of losing oneself in love. But actually, interestingly, Venus also appeared as the morning star and the warrior goddess. So Venus can also, I'm not really talking about that much in this talk, but Venus can also be the warrior goddess. So that part of Venus kind of gets lost a little bit. Although there's a lady, her name's Ariel Gutman, she does work with what's called the Venus star point. And she actually talks about the difference between Venus stars, which is a little bit different astronomically and astrologically. But again, astronomy is different than astrology, but of course we use the astronomy and we interpret it. That's really the principal difference. We interpret astronomical phenomenon for ourselves. Okay. These are all wonderful questions, by the way, and it is about the questions. Does that all make sense?
Yes.
Okay, well, absolutely wonderful stuff. Okay, so but still Venus in nowadays is, of course, the most important planet involving love. I mean, everybody knows this. Venus is love, Venusian. I mean, you don't need to be an astrologer to know this. So there was a Roman poet, Manilius, and he actually instead of placing Venus in this part of the chart that's sweet love and creativity and children and the good fortune around creative acts and love and, you know, fertility, he actually put Venus at the top of an astrology chart. So if we're thinking of Venus in a much more earthly place, as I was defining it before and as it was defined before, Manilius said, no, Venus is at the top of the sky. Venus should be put at the top. I don't know, they have a problem with that. I mean, it's like, you know, love is this higher thing and very visible thing. And this, you know, I interpret this could be emphasized as emphasizing glamour or public recognition. You know, you think of, gosh, I mean, in the 20th century, the explosion of like film and images and, you know, the glamour of Hollywood or the glamour of the mythology around, you know, the starlet. You know, this is a much more modern conception of love as, you know, glamour. And interestingly, there's different ways to do this, but it's also the part of the chart that's associated with the mother. So, you know, even it's very interesting. I get like stage mother from this. I mean, but yeah, I know, but it's interesting because we do really, again, we emphasize, you know, love or beauty as something as we're known publicly or career. That has much more of an emphasis than these other things I'm talking about, even the egoistic expression of love or the ancient expression of love. You know, these things really get pushed to the wayside. You know, romance or even our children or creativity. Much more emphasis is placed on career and public recognition and life kind of outcomes. So it's really, I think literally Venus in that conception overshadows everything else. Because again, Venus is being at the top of the sky, you know. So these are all things to think about with regard to love. Like, you know, so it's love. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about love, hopefully with love. We're giving some love to all these topics, but hopefully we're in an open-hearted place right now to do this. Okay. So this is where it gets into the nitty gritty. So I've been kind of idyllic and it's sort of hopefully idealistic, but this is when love takes a real fall. Okay, so there's this other part of the chart called the 8th house, and this is in the sky, right? Because when the sun rises, culminates, and sets every day, you know, sun up, sun down. So if you ever watch the way the sun from vantage point of Earth travels, it kind of shoots up in the morning. It has some hang time. It's almost like going up for a basketball shot. It like shoots up, there's some hang time, and then comes down. So the fall of the sun, it's kind of like, it's almost like a death that happens every day. So this is the part of the chart that's business. It's also the part, literally it rules the sacral region or like the private parts. It's really where it moves from this romantic, sweet, creative thing to, okay, we're getting in bed together. This is business. We're merging together. It's the part of the chart that's like dowries, or it's the resources of other partners. It's the business part of the chart. This is where, you know, we could interpret the phrase getting in bed together. So, and it's related to like the claws of the scorpion, you know, the word for spouse in Spanish is handcuffs. So we get bound to each other. You know, this is the place of like carnal sex. I mean, you can think of the film Fatal Attraction, you know, when they're in that steamy business meeting and then an affair ensues and it gets into these deep psychological things. It's the place of taxes, inheritances. So you really want to think about this. This is, and Joan, I think of Joan Rivers, she said at the end of the day, it's all business. So I'm talking about love and creativity and sweetness, but there still is the reality of stuff. So that has to be mixed into it too. So I'm not saying, you know, that one has to be mutually exclusive to the other, but there is this tension between the two of them. And it's really, you know, dealing with that tension to really construct something in your life, because it does manifest. And both of these energies, by the way, are very intractable. They're fixed. So it's like fixed about love, but fixed about the business too. So it's really this need in life to have open-hearted, be loving, all that kind of stuff, talking about love, but also, look, we're still getting in bed together, and there's the business side of it too. The behavioral economist, Daniel Kahneman, he would refer this to social transactions versus economic transactions. So there's the money, the business, but then there's also the social that just, wow, I love you, you know, we're in this together. So if we go back to that short story, you know, what we talk about when we talk about love, there are economic forces. All those people have jobs, they have lives, you know, they got to survive, but then they're held in the economics of, you know, they have this room to be in. You know, Virginia Woolf famously said a woman needs money in a room to write fiction. So the story has to have some economic base underneath it to have the love. So I'm not, you know, there's the romanticism, but then there's also the reality. And those two things have to really, they square off against each other, but they have to be grappled with. Okay. So this is sort of the last part of the chart, and I really want to get to some questions. And I really am encouraging you. I'm purposefully leaving this, you know, I've been going for like a half hour now, to really get into some questions, and I can go back over some things. But interestingly, the original planetary body of communication, guess what, was the moon, which is very interesting because nowadays the planet of communication is Mercury. When you think of like a little Mercury ball or something like Mercury, the word mercurial, it's very kind of communicative and quick. Interestingly, today is Mercury's day. And Mercury being the planet of communication, ruling, you know, a planet rules over certain domains of life. So roads, travelers, and it can even be little devilish thieves. If we're going back to the Greek equivalent of Mercury, it's Hermes, Hermes kind of invented modern language. He took language from Apollo, which was very sort of religious, high art kind of language, and, you know, made it kind of street, you know, kind of so we can speak in common parlance to each other without having to utter like hexameters. So Mercury's all about communication, thinking, the aware cognitive processes. You know, you think of, and then can be really turned on a dime very quickly. Like you think of the character Mercutio in Shakespeare. So it's kind of all that. But interestingly, in antiquity, the planetary body that ruled communication was the moon. And she found her joy in the goddess house. Okay, so very different. The moon is all about feel, emotion. Again, getting back to those gestational cycles. And the moon also signifies the body. So this is really powerful stuff, because what that means is communicating on these very feeling gestational levels is very different than just, okay, I'm here, this is this, I'm driving along in the car, make this turn here. Very different, the need to communicate on a visceral, even bodily level, and to communicate that way with love, communication, feel. And interestingly, the great astrologer Isabel Hickey, she talked about the moon as being the builder of form. This is really profound stuff, that we actually build form in our lives through emotion and feel. We don't necessarily build it, I mean, we do build it through reality and hard kind of material stuff, but, and even the mechanics of technology and all that. But the feel is really how we build things, and being from a heart-centered place. This is really something, and I have a little quote there. There's an old saying, in vino temprano. So I think sometimes in modern times, we lose so much of the true heart-centered communication. Of course, there's a lot of talk about emotion, but we lose all that stuff. And then what do? We go and drink, or we medicate in some ways, or we really want to ignore our emotions because the emotion tells us something. I'm not saying like if we observe something and we get in a bad mood, we should stay there. But it's really honoring the emotional state and communicating that, and then somebody else will be there, hopefully, to take that heart line, that it can be really open-hearted. And then you really talk about how you feel about these things. And then that can really get you to a good, fortunate, creative place, like what I was talking about before, and really build things for yourself on an emotional level, so you have some emotional sanctity. It's the goddess house. It's this goddess place. Okay, and the reason I'm talking about this, because it's the age of conversation. What, talking about love with love. This is not the God house in antiquity was the sun. So the sun is being this giver of life. It's higher mindedness. It's like all this stuff, but we're really talking on a more simple level of goddess stuff, communication, really building things. And actually in China, going back to Chinese culture for thousands of years, they felt that actually the moon brings order. So it's interesting, in modern times, we think of like, okay, Shakespeare starting A Midsummer Night's Dream with like the madness of the moon and the beautiful poetry of it. And it can be a little bit, again, you like lose something, or, it's dreamy. But actually in Chinese culture, it's felt that actually gives order and form to things. So, in love and madness, it is chaotic. But it really is about accepting that chaos, so then there can be some order that emerges out of it. I think when we use rationality and try to impose that on all of this stuff that I've been talking about, like the moon, Venus, the getting in bed with each other, when we try to impose too much hard rationality onto it, it doesn't work. There are a lot of examples you think of, like in literature. It's like, well, if I just do X, I'll get Y. I think we all know life doesn't work that way. Life is very chaotic, but then when you accept that chaos, then you begin to have some negotiating power, because it's like, okay, universe, or whomever, whatever kind of higher power, whatever that is, or even your own spiritual self, your spirit, or you can just think of that literally, like your own psyche, your own kind of makeup, on a simplistic level. Once you accept that chaos, then you can have some order and form to things. But you have to start from accepting, in my opinion, all this stuff. The goddess, the Venus, the getting in bed with each other. So
I have a quick question, Dan.
Yes, yeah.
Go ahead, Tanita.
Yeah, so I connect to what you were saying about like loving your career and giving that energy to your career,
right?
Or just like passion projects or whatever it is. How do you make that shift to give that same type of energy to like your friends, family, relationships, those type of things?
Okay, really good question. So I'm actually going to have to bring in another planetary body, Mars, okay? Because if you think about, like, you don't want to necessarily think about love and, well, Venus and Mars, right? But, you know, Mars, again, in antiquity, found his joy in the part of the chart that's kind of like your daily activities. So again, when Manilius puts Venus up into the top part of the chart, we're really tied to our public recognition. There's a great book called The Happiness Myth by a lady, Jennifer Michael Hecht, and she wrote it because it's like everybody's really concerned about success, and you know, but less attention is paid to just daily activities. So, and just kind of pleasure amongst your daily life. So, this is my opinion, because so much emphasis is placed on career, public recognition, and even how we're perceived by other people. I'm not saying, of course that's important. Like, you know, I'm getting up, you know, I'm on the screen, I thought this shirt would be kind of fun. There's definitely some of that, but that can really shortchange all the other stuff you just mentioned. And it's time. That's Chronos, or chronology, which gets into stuff that's very Saturnian. That's the planet Saturn. So it's, you know, it's kind of doing the dirty work of Mars. I have to have the energy to do my daily life and try to enjoy that, have the discipline to do it, and really getting down to the business of it. Who are the people around me that can help me with that? And there's a business thing to it in order to have the love. So the business side of it, so you can have that conversation about, like they did in what we talk about when we talk about love. So they can have that kitchen, so they can have the space to do all the stuff that you're talking about. But again, and I think we're starting to get into this. You started to see in the last several years organizations like Gallup or Studying Happiness, like what are some honestly objective metrics for emotional outcomes. So it's like there are certain things that, I mean, just off the top of my head, how many good, this is perfect for this summit, how many positive interactions do you have daily on a conversational level? That is a big indicator of how you're going to feel every day. And then if you start feeling better and thinking about yourself better, there was a guy like ex-military talking about this. If you start feeling better about how your outcomes can be through all that stuff, then you're going to get the better outcomes that you're wanting about all the stuff that you just mentioned, like family, you know, creative projects, all that. But I think you're going to have to, in some sense, let a little bit of the how you're perceived go. And that is like a tough thing, I think, in modernity, because we're really on Facebook, we're on all that. It's like, how many likes do you get? Not easy, because that stuff really taps into the brain. And there was oh my gosh, it was like Harvard study, like maybe 10 years ago, but it was a book called Contagious that cited this, that we get a hit in the brain when we talk about ourselves. It's like the pleasure center. So that's like the whole of media and society. Like, I'm on Facebook, here's how I feel. And then you get the hit because if you get a lot of likes, but does that really give you what you just wanted to do in your life? I don't think so. So this is really like deep stuff about like just our daily life. So it's kind of like integrating Venus and Mars. Mars is the like, all right, I'm going to do this, get it going in motion, just get that visceral action in order to have the love. And interestingly, they require integration in astrology, again, in an ancient sense. They kind of can't see each other, Venus and Mars. Like, we can't see each other sometimes in relationships. Like, we can get so separated, but just for your own daily life, go with your daily activities, go for it. But then that gives you the sanctity that you're needing. There was actually a famous conductor, one of my favorites, Riccardo Muti, and going back to the In Vino Temprano, like the truth of it, he, you know, and who knows what was happening, but at one point he was having this big fight with an orchestra. And he's like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I have to have the peace and serenity to do my creative work. So you have to have your daily kind of rituals, your daily activities, your daily, you know, kind of just what you're doing on a daily level in order to get to all that stuff. And you might have to leave a little bit behind of how you're perceived by other people. and then get the business partners around you who kind of, you know, the getting in bed together, how they can, you know, really support you in your efforts, and vice versa, that you really can, you know, give your, you know, resources to them. And I know it's complex, but the good thing is this is being recorded, so you can listen back to that. A lot of information in these questions, a lot of information in the answer, but you can listen back, and I think it'll really help. Okay, do we have other questions?
I just want to make an observation, like in today's world, like we were talking about smoke, but you mentioned it, like the technology aspect, Facebook and all that other stuff, and how that the brain hits. You know, we talked about modern love, ancient love, and you think about how people are even connecting today. Where I'm married, but if I was single, you know, there's Tinder, there's Bumble, there's, you know, all those that out there that, you know, is there another way of connecting and finding that? And I don't mean to get into anybody's personal private, I'm just saying, is that part of all a swirl that goes around us? I guess well, the best way.
You know, it's actually interesting because there was a shift that happened planetarily, and it can be hard to predict these things, but Saturn, again, think of the word Saturnian, or limiting, or the god Chronos, which is chronology, time, limitation, hard reality. Saturn moved into the sign Aquarius at the end of March, which was right when the social distance mandating happened. Aquarius is social networks. Aquarius is the water bearer. It's technology.
That's me.
Okay, yeah, it's okay. So that would hit your So actually, really, for the next, oh God, I don't have my ephemeris, but it's really from the end of. Oh man, you know, there's more to it, but basically the message is getting real about social networks, technology, the flow of currency of things, and that can be technology, electricity, and, you know, all this stuff. And even money, but getting disciplined about the reality of that to get to the future and freedom that you're wanting. So that's with the tech stuff. And it's been a big shift, I think, for all of us. Even me, I'm like, I'm not always a tech guy. I mean, even though astrology relies a lot on technology, you know, we throw up all the charts and, you know, we do the calculations. I spend a lot of my time reading and, you know, looking into the humanities, because I think astrology is a part of the humanities. And the humanities is a way to connect to sensations, truly. So what you're talking about is, okay, Grindr or Tinder or all that those are sensations of the body. But is there another way that one can connect with, like, the higher angels of sensations through literature and music, and sublimating those senses towards that, which, you know, that's not, I'm hoping, you know, that's a concept. And I think that this message, and I don't think there's necessarily an objective message, is when we're all separated from each other, who are you? And that's a very spiritual, you know, place that touches a deep part of the soul. So that's something that I think all of this is leading us to right now, in my opinion, with this shift that just happened. It was at the end of March. And who are you when you're alone? Well, can you read, or can you meditate? Like, do you have that gear that you can go into, that inner sanctity, which was much more emphasized in prior cultures, probably just because of happenstance. But it's a very different thing, and it's nobody's ever experienced this in modern times, not even close. So, but then we connect through technology here. So that's quite interesting. I mean, none of us would be connecting this way if this hadn't happened, probably. You know, we'd probably go to conferences and all that, but it's like, wow, we're here. And that's really something. And it can be quite, you have to do it on a dime. And it's a little, even for me, I mean, I can go with technology, but I need, you know, I need the help. Like, so I'm happy I had some of y'all this morning to get on it, and we were like, okay, here's what you need to do, Dan, because, you know, I spend time reading or really seeing clients, because, you know, what we talk about when we talk about love, that's what I do with clients every day. And I open my heart to clients and try to get clients to open their hearts. So, and then trying to get y'all to open your hearts this morning. So, you know, that's different than necessarily, you know, technology, but the technology can, you know, give us the pathway and to do this stuff. So it is a real shift. There was the question before about, it's a hard shift. It's what we call fixed energy. A lot of, even though the requirement of change, it's kind of like we're in it, and it's not necessarily, okay, we can just make a shift and it's powerful. It's like, it is that, but it's really like getting discipline now for the future. And we're having a shift at the end of the year. It's called the Saturn Pluto, or oh God, that was the beginning of the year. I don't want to get too much into this, but the end of the year, it's called the Grand Conjunction. Saturn and Jupiter come together in the sky, and it'll be beautiful because the two of them will be together. It'll be and it's every 20 years this happens, and it does indicate like a new era. So we are moving into a new era. I mean, this is really big stuff for the next 20 years. I mean, wow, that's really, I think the real point is for y'all is this is what I've done some videos on this on my YouTube channel. It should just be like Inner Makeup Astrology, but it's Saturn, the restrictions of this year, and using that as like a window into the future. So there's obviously, everybody's experienced the travails of this, but what's the silver lining that you can say, you know what, if this hadn't happened, I wouldn't have thought about this. Wow, this is how I can really shift into the future. I can imagine a future for myself. Not necessarily easy, because again, we live in a disenchanted space, but what's the hard reality now so that you can envision the future? Okay.
We did have another question.
Yes.
Do you have any must-read book suggestions on this topic?
Actually, the one that has really come to my mind recently, it's a work of fiction, but it's called Haroun and Other Sea Stories. That's Haroun. That's by the writer Salman Rushdie. And he wrote it for his son, but it's essentially about, it's a family, and it's about when somebody loses their voice, how to get it back through imagination. And if things like creep in too much about disenchantment and the hard reality of things, losing one's voice and creativity and imagination and stories is a very perilous place to be. So that's like a work of fiction that can get you into this mindset. Well, of course you can go to innermakeup.net, my website. The other two that I would recommend, there's a wonderful, and he came on the podcast, Star Love Podcast. His name's Henry Seltzer, but he has a website called astrograph.com. Really great to kind of just get started in astrology. And my favorite astrology book is by Isabel Hickey, great 20th century astrologist. She passed away in the early 80s, but I love her book. I forget what it's called. It's like Astrology, a Cosmic Science, I think. But Isabel Hickey, Hickey, and then just Isabel, Isabel. So those three. So go to my website, of course, innermakeup.net, or for Haroun and Other Sea Stories, Isabel Hickey, and astrograph.com. And then actually, you know what? I can show you all this, but there's a wonderful app on the it's called Time Passages. Gosh, it's hard to, here's the little, let's see if I can do this. Time Passages.
Oh, yeah.
I know. So Henry's a wonderful gentleman and his team of people. And you can actually, that app, you can just start kind of learning astrology in time. So you can start so it's like, okay, Sun in Virgo, what's that? Okay. You really can start learning, okay, my moon, what's that? What is, and that gives me this insight about myself that way. So those are some resources that, I think, and by the way, one of the main points, you can really start doing divination. Just take your time and always honor the insights that come to you. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to be an advanced astrologer to get insights for yourself and really doing some, enchanting things in your life and having, like you were saying, the smoke, like just what might that mean? Oh gosh, it was, I don't know, maybe I'm burning it too much. It's like the factory and there's like, this, something like, I don't know, something like that. But you can really start doing that. And then one of the great progenitors of the Renaissance, I always talk about this, Marsilio Ficino, really one of the intellectual, people who spurned on the Renaissance. I mean, amazing. He said those who are least learned in those arts understand them the best. So you don't have to be like an academic. I mean, you can really feel this stuff on a very profound level. It's sort of like the lay people at church, you know, it's like, and sometimes the more advanced people, because there's so much knowledge, know less. So just understand that when if you start going down an astrological path or whatever path it is for you, just honor your own insights along the way. Like take, for example, all of you have such wonderful questions. These are great questions. So love, again, the poet Rilke loved the question itself. Well, why am I asking that? Okay, this might mean this. So make sure you honor that stuff about yourself and your own nature, and then it comes from within. The heavens are entirely within. That's another thing from Ficino. Okay? Got the Italian going on a little bit. In Vino Temprano. In Vino Temprano, Marsilio Ficino.
Love
so
it.
it's I love Italian too. I'm not Italian, but my husband is Italian, and my great-grandmother, her second husband was Italian. There's something, I don't know, it's like, whatever reason, it's something. So, and I know quite a bit about Italian film, and it's, you know, it's very interesting. I don't know what that is, but it's there in the blood for me. But,
it's a very romantic culture.
Yes, there you go. Right, there you go. Thank you, duh. That's, yeah, the most, see, there you go. That's it.
Very passionate one too.
Yeah, right. And I am very passionate, so.
But you know, in these times, as we talk about, you know, listening, thank you for all your insights. And if anybody has any questions, please ask. But you know, we're living in uncertain times, yeah. And it's I don't want to say we're all in this, you know, what everybody else says or do this and that. But I think this time has given us, and I hope everyone has taken the time to reflect inside. You know, it's like, oh, you know, I think when it hit, everybody thought, oh, my job, oh, I lost my job, or what am I going to do now? Where's this? A lot of that stuff, I think we sometimes forget to just kind of sit still for a moment, as you might want to say, or just kind of
well, and pause. Yes, and it's interesting too. You'll see on the, you know, I put an image of the moon there. It's up in the right corner, but it's I found this little image of, it's like a bar. And interestingly, in the astrology chart, the same part of the chart that can be spiritual sanctity or just kind of getting peaceful like that is also like alcohol. So, and bars. So, well, not really bars, but kind of it can be delusions. So it's really getting, you know, the famous hedge fund manager, Ray Dalio, talks about this, like meditation to get to what's really true in the reality of a situation. So oftentimes people self-medicate through whatever it is, like TV or whatever. I'm not against watching TV, but like whatever it might be that you kind of have escapism, as opposed to really sitting and just being still and then letting those kind of insights come to you. Very, very interesting stuff. I mean, we don't talk, I mean, on a simple level, it can be just denial, but then denial, as you can, if you really face what's happening, then you can become liberated from whatever that is.
Yeah, it's hard to be alone with yourself sometimes, right?
It is.
You have like some, especially like now, like some dark stuff going on. Deb,
right.
You know, you mentioned just like since March, we've all been kind of going, what is going on? Like, what does my future look like? What is, you know?
Well, see, this is the thing. And I was saying this about Saturn, which is Aquarius is a sign of the future. Saturn just moved into that part of the chart. Mm-hmm. So Aquarius is all about the future is not here now, but what do you have to do to get to the future in your daily stuff? So it's not necessarily that glamorous. Again, it's not that Manilius Venus at the top of the chart, but to get to some of those places, what's the like, okay, this is like, and in time, being in time, because Saturn is time, it's the Greek equivalent is chronos, it's chronology. So it's time and but it's once you do that, and again, remember the question, have a little bit of joy just along those moments. And you know what, pick up, like before this, I was just thinking in my head, and sometimes it's with the emails and everything, but I just shot off like 3 emails to people like, hey, look, I happened to be driving through Georgia, and one of my colleagues lives in Georgia. I was thinking about you, blah, 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 blah. So, and then again, that goes back to, remember the Gallup research about the social interactions that are positive every day can really help you. And then there are, I mean, let's get real. I mean, I know the social distancing is tough, but we have more access to communication than we ever have in our entire lives. So like, good heavens, we can pick up the phone, or we can, you know, and then that phone conversations are fun. I mean, I don't know about you, but like, especially before we had like tons of like chat or Facebook, we're all on the phone, and phone conversations can be really fun. I mean, there's that, one of my favorite scenes is, she's sort of the villain, but in the movie The Women, the old one, it was like 1939, Joan Crawford, she's like sitting in a bathtub with a phone. I mean, it's like, so like, hell, we've got the phone, like pick up the phone. So it's like, if you're feeling like a little down, open your heart to somebody. I know a lot of people say this, but we really do get isolated, and then the mind starts ruminating, but it's those little things. And then again, you wouldn't like, none of us would be talking to each other without this online summit. So that's, you know, for us, hey, it's getting disciplined. How might the future be on this level? I have a good friend, she's in the pharmaceutical industry, but she's very good at like, okay, that came in from that thing, and like LinkedIn, or that came in from that. And it's not so much going all in on each of those platforms, but it's like, okay, that's there now. So it's using all of that technology to stay in time. It's kind of like centrifugal force, you know, this idea that like, if you're swinging a lasso around or whatever, you're like that ball in the middle. So like everything, the planets are swirling around you. I mean, of course we know they're not, but you're staying centered as everything's like shifting around you, and then you're kind of staying centered. So even though we know that the universe is very chaotic, and it's like, whoa, think about Earth like moving around the sun and black holes, you can still stay centered within yourself and have sort of that centrifugal force, and you see things rotating around us.
We have got 1 minute.
Okay. Any
John,
last?
I mean, we can go on, because there's so much that
yes, and
you've
that's
given
why.
us.
Yeah, so that's why it's good it's being recorded. And what's the room? What's the room?
Central Perk. You can go to
oh my
Central
God.
Perk,
Right,
please.
right.
You know, go over there,
Yes. So
everyone. If you want to continue the conversation with Dan, or
Right.
you know, start your own, go whatever, you know, have something personal you want to talk to him directly,
Right.
please go there, meet up with him there. But we will be ending shortly. So any
Okay.
questions?
Yeah,
Ask away.
one last question.
Anybody, Bueller. You can unmute yourselves. Free for all. We have so many great suggestions that are coming through in the chat regarding astrological sites, meditation, apps.
Right, yes.
It sounds like a lot of different things to like keep you centered. So
yes.
We're gonna keep the chat open for a minute.
Right, and here's the thing, and this is a personal thing, but you know, sometimes just going with you know, it's like, what's that old saying? It's not about which exercise is the best, it's the one you're just going to do. So there's that. So the other thing too is, please, you know what, honestly, if you have any questions, just shoot me an email, dan@innermakeup.net, dan@innermakeup.net. Please, just if you have a little question, feel free to do that. You know, I'm definitely, you know, go ahead and do that. So.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, this has been amazing.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you so much. Oh, hi, everybody.
Hello, yes.
Again, if you want to continue the conversation, please meet up at Central Perk.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to be stopping the video, the recording, if it hasn't been stopped yet. And our agenda, we have another great session coming up. Please stay with us. We do have a meditation session coming up on too as well. So please join us all day.
Yes.
We love to see you, and we want to say thank you again.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.